And you can see it doesn't have to be perfect, because then I'll come back in with a little tool and just kind of open the eyelids where I need to. Now you see why it was pointing up, because I really wanted to show more of the bottom of the eye and just sort of the eyelids cutting off through the pupil on the top part of the eye, because it kind of rolled back a look to it. So I put cotton in the empty eye socket where the acrylic was, and I shoved cotton into the nose and fill that in, because it'll be a lot easier to paint later. Now all the latex that is dried up on my fingers, I just roll that off and let it fall onto the table, and I just shove it into the nose, and you can see it kind of looks like a little dried up piece of cartilage and just junk in the nose. Nice little rot, nice little decay. So the next day, after this was dry, you can see the latex is dried and turned almost like a flesh color, a very light flesh color. I let it dry, and the next thing I'm going to do is you need to get an anatomy book, okay? Because this anatomy book is really going to show you where the muscles lie, where the tissue would be, where the veins would be, any of the arteries, anything important. So you can see here that the lower jaw is actually attached to the top of your skull through a tendon that runs through the cheekbone. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and unroll some more cotton, shove it into the latex like I've done before, shove it under that bone, attach it to the top of the jaw, and then attach the other end to the top of the side of the skull, rather, into your temples. Okay, and that's just a really loose interpretation of a muscle. I mean, it's not 100% accurate, but at least now it'll have just that bit more of a realism to it. You know, you'll understand exactly where it goes. So here's how you unroll a cotton ball. I mean, if you've never done that, why would you? You just find that little edge, and they'll unroll nicely for you. Okay. So after I get a few cotton balls in there, kind of going to the right direction, I noticed that the latex was peeling up on my fingers, and that's exactly what I wanted to look like on the skull. So I pour latex onto the skull, just let it dry. You just put it all over, smear it around with your finger, let it dry. Then if you rub that with a little bit of a pressure, once it's totally dry, it'll roll up and stick to itself and give you a really cool webbing, rotten flesh, whatever you want to call it, look. In effects, we called it Nernies. This is what you're going to end up with. I think it's a really cool start. This whole process is all about layering. So I also did the mouth here and with cotton and let that dry. So now I've taken what may be burnt sienna, I'm guessing by the color, or the label obviously fell off. But a little bit of cup, a little bit of paint in a cup, a little bit of water, just get it really nice and very, very wet. You want this really, really thin. This is called a wash. You're just washing the paint on. And I just kind of work this all around, all over. There's no real rhyme or reason to it, and there's just you don't want it to be too uniform. You want it to kind of splatter around. You want it to kind of slop around a little bit, and that'll give you some of that texture that you'll need later. So I noticed that there's veins running up the side of the skull, arteries. So I go ahead and pour some latex onto a flat surface, formica surface, a non-porous surface. And then I get back to the painting so that the latex can dry. Okay, so now here I've just thrown some green in there just to, you know, start adding onto the colors and the different layers of decay. And it's a very bright green, but it'll work out in the end, you'll see. So here I go ahead and roll that up a little bit and tear it off, and you can kind of see it looks like just a little rotten vein. So I attach those to the top of the head and to the bottom, as you saw, and we'll let that dry. So now I'm just showing you here that you can actually paint with Q-tips if you want. We used to do it a lot in effects. I'm using a little bit of the green, a little bit of the red. These are just washes, just really wet and kind of just touching it and splattering it on there and into the eye so it kind of doesn't look so plain white. And then I come back and I pick up any, break up any flat spots that I may have left for the first wash. Okay, now you can kind of get a look at how it's starting to look, just ugly and layers of decay. Now I take that paintbrush that I used, cut all the bristles off so it's really nice and short and stiff, and then you can use that to kind of splatter little bits of color all around. You can kind of see it in the forehead here, and it just breaks up that surface. That's really all you're looking to do. Okay? So now I'll let that dry, and I'll pour latex down and just smear this all over with your fingers. You want kind of the high spots, the low spots, you want those ridges, and you'll see why later. So once that's dry, you do the same thing. This is just how you make Nernies in effects. You just roll the latex around and you get this nice big webbing. You see how big the piece is? Well, after you powder it, you got to powder it so it doesn't stick to itself anymore. or else it'll just roll into a little ball. Look at that, it just shrinks down to nothing. Well, it's still very, very stretchy and very elastic. It's latex. So you go ahead and stretch that all around the skull, and that'll be just another piece of your layering technique. And you can see here, once I get it to where I like it, I'll just kind of go through and tack glue it down, just little touches of super glue here and there, not all over, just little bits. And I'll go ahead and build another one. I've just added black to liquid latex, and I go ahead and brush this all around too. Okay, and I don't want it to be a solid edge, so I kind of break the edge up a little bit, just giving it an uneven edge. And once that's dry, I go ahead and do the same thing. This is a little more delicate. This actually wasn't totally dry, 100%, and it's very brittle. So I went ahead and pulled it off, and I tacked it underneath the roof of the mouth and the back of the skull there. And you can kind of see it just kind of breaks up the inside of the mouth a little bit, just kind of sets it apart. Now I'm going to go in with just a smaller brush and just touch little details that I may have missed, just little washes, and hit the insides of the eye, give that nice little red, little bloody eye. And since it's a wash, you can go ahead and touch the eyeball up a little bit if you need to. You already threw a nice base down with the Q-tips, now you can kind of fine detail it with a brush. And I'll also go ahead and take a little bit of brown and paint that under the eyelid, and that'll create like a shadow effect. Give it a little more depth and dimension. So some of the paint that stays on the eye, I leave it just because it kind of clouds it up a little bit and breaks it up. I'll go ahead and drop a little bit of yellows and greens into the teeth too to kind of make those look a little gross. A little bit of red too, just break up the surface. Then I'll take a red wash before it's all done and just wash the entire skull just in red, just in certain parts, I guess, not the entire skull, just to kind of let it run down and drip off like it's blood. And why a rotten, decaying skull would still be bleeding is beyond me, but it looks cool. Okay, so you can kind of get an idea of where it's going. Next thing I do is I take cheesecloth. This is really cheap. You can get it at any fabric store, and it's like $5 for a big box of it. So you get the cheesecloth, just cut into it, hack into it, start ripping it, tearing it, pulling it. I wad it all up, and I take the paint that I used to clean my brushes out with and that wash that I just had, the red, and I just shove it down in there. And there you go. Your white cheesecloth is now going to get a little dry, a bit of a brown color. Okay, that's all you want. It's very wet right here, so it's kind of light. Let it dry, it'll darken up a touch. I also made a black one. I just rolled out a little edge and made a little black cheesecloth and some of that black water wash. Okay, now this one, and these are after these are totally dry now. The cheesecloth is dry. Let it soak, sit out in the sun for about a day. In the LA summer, it dried up right away. Okay, and this is just, I'm just wrapping it around. It's nothing's tacked, nothing's glued. It's all just sort of sitting there nice and loose. Okay, and it'll stay up there. It'll just kind of hang on there really nice. I guess that would be this pirate's bandana. So there you go. There you have it. Here's the finished product. So you can continue with the latex and cotton stage, but I kind of like it like this. So I'm going to go ahead and leave it, and it'll make a perfect Halloween decoration. Scare the kids. You can put it on a stick or a stake and make it look like it's just a head on a stake. So here's some photos, and if you want to get your own, just go to skullkit.com. And thank you for watching.